All right. Tonight on the morning report, we're dropping the kid gloves, putting away the soft language, and telling the truth that polite society refuses to touch. The truth Washington is terrified of. The truth the media will only whisper after the damage is already done. Here it is. So when you import people that you don't bother to properly vet, you import their problems too. And sometimes those problems come with a trigger, a loaded magazine, and zero regard for your laws, your customs, your value, or your lives. So we are here because two National Guard troops have been shot, gunned down in broad daylight in Washington, D.C., not very far from the White House, okay, by a man who should have never been allowed to set foot in the country, let alone roam freely near the White House. A man who waved through during the compassion first and security later era of immigration policy, the era where feelings mattered more than facts and optics mattered more than outcomes. Those two guardsmen didn't get shot because of bad luck. They didn't get shot because of random violence. They didn't get shot because of societal issues or systemic inequalities or whatever fashionable BS professors in $80 million diversity centers like to lecture about. They got shot because the United States government, under pressure from activists in international NGOs and an obedient media chorus, opened the door wider than ever and refused to check who walked through. And now the bill is due. I know this show. I know this audience. You show up because you want truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it exposes failures on both sides, and even when it cuts against the narratives Americans are bullied into repeating. You don't want therapy talk. You want clarity. So let's get clear. The Afghan shooter who ambushed these two guardsmen in DC did not magically appear on our soil. He did not teleport here in a lightning strike. He was brought here. He was packaged. He was approved. He was delivered by a system that prioritizes speed over scrutiny, quotas over caution, and international expectations over American safety. This is part of the story the media dances around like the floor is lava. They'll say, we should be careful not to generalize. This is a rare case. They'll say, this tragedy must not fuel anti-immigrant sentiment. But here's what they won't say. This was preventable. This was foreseeable. And this was the direct result of no vetting. Tonight, we're going to pull this thing apart from top to bottom. What happened, why it happened, how we got here, and what every politician pretending this isn't business as usual is lying. They're lying to your face. We're also going to examine why President Trump's response, halting Afghan immigration processing, ordering revetting, and deploying 500 more guardsmen, is proof that the adults are finally back in the room. But we're going to go deeper than that, because this isn't just about Afghanistan. This isn't just about one shooter. This isn't about just one attack. This is about a philosophy of reckless compassion that has infected the immigration debate for more than a decade. The belief that America should absorb unlimited numbers of people from unstable regions without strict screening, without cultural expectations, and without consequences. The belief that borders are optional, the belief that vetting is somehow hateful, the belief that caution is cruelty, the belief that just got 2 American soldiers shot. So where I was raised and where you were raised, that's not just a policy failure, it's a moral failure. Let's go. Here are the facts the media will repeat and the ones they will carefully avoid. On the evening of November 26th, 2 National Guard troops deployed to Washington, D.C. as part of the Federal Protection Mission were ambushed and shot near the White House. They were not confronting anyone. They were not engaged in any enforcement activity. They were simply performing the duties assigned to them. The shooter, Ramallah Bakhmal, 29-year-old Afghan national, he wasn't a tourist, wasn't a student, he wasn't a diplomat, he wasn't a refugee settled through decades of established vetting programs. He was part of a mass evacuation pipeline that moved tens of thousands of Afghans into the United States during the collapse of Kabul. A chaotic crush of bodies where U.S. officials later admitted they had insufficient time to complete background checks. Translation: we let people through who we couldn't verify. I mean, we're just hoping for the best. That's the bureaucratic version. But here's the real version. We took in people we didn't know from a region that obviously we couldn't control during a crisis that we didn't manage. You saw what happened under rules that we didn't enforce. And now we are shocked that something went wrong. According to the reporting, the suspect opened fire without warning, shooting the 2 guardsmen before being subdued. President Trump, in a furious public statement, called it a heinous assault, an act of terror, and ordered immediate revetting of all Afghans brought in under the chaotic evacuation era. Some reporters rushed to say that it wasn't terrorism, that we shouldn't jump to conclusions. But let me ask you something. If a foreign national kills a U.S. soldier on U.S. soil after entering through a failed vetting system, what part of that isn't terror? If you're feeling pressure not to call it terrorism, the pressure doesn't come from evidence, it comes from politics. It came from the people who are always more concerned about the feelings of the attacker's demographic group than the lives of the victims. It comes from people who care more about the narrative than the truth. And that brings us to the heart of the matter. Here's the deal. We've been sold a lie for years, a lie that any concern about vetting is somehow racism or xenophobia or cruelty, that wanting to know who comes into your house is somehow immoral. But here's the truth that Washington can't stand. Mass immigration from unstable regions is not risk-free. It is not guaranteed safe, and it is not a moral obligation. When you combine sloppy vetting or no vetting with political pressure and the media machine determined to shame anyone who dares raise concerns, you get exactly what we're living through right now. Preventable tragedies with body counts. Let me make something perfectly clear. Don't you like that phrase? Let me make something perfectly clear. America has always welcomed immigrants. We have always offered opportunity. We have always been a refuge. But refuge is not the same thing as chaos. And generosity is not the same thing as suicide. There is a difference between welcoming the world's huddled masses and importing unknown individuals during a crisis without verifying who they are, what they've done, or what they plan to do. People with good intentions don't need to lie about vetting. People with bad intentions don't need much help getting through a system that isn't working. We would never run a daycare like this. We would never run a school like this. We would never run a bank like this. Only the federal government could look at a flood of unverified individuals from a war zone and conclude that the proper response is it'll be fine. This is the arrogance of elite policymaking, arrogance of people who do not suffer the consequences of their own decision, the arrogance of people who live behind walls guarded by armed security while telling you that walls and guns don't work. Well, two soldiers just paid the price for their arrogance. And to Washington's shock, President Trump did what they refused to do. He called it what it was: shut the pipeline down and ordered revetting, because that's what leaders need to do. Leaders confront reality, even when it's ugly. All right, folks, this is where the media counts on your ignorance. They assume you don't know how vetting really works. So they feed you a line about thorough background checks and hope that you don't ask too many questions. You know what we do here? We ask the damn questions. We ask questions that they don't want to answer. Let me break it down how bad vetting happens. Number one, when you import people faster than you can check them, that happens. During the Afghan evacuation, DHS and the DoD officials admitted that they were processing individuals in minutes, not hours, not days. Some evacuees had no paperwork at all, no identification, no proof of anything. So when you're moving bodies, not identities, you're not vetting, you're just guessing, you're just hoping. So when the originating country's data is unreliable or non existent, Afghanistan didn't have a modern, reliable national database. Criminal records, spotty. Birth records, often absent. Identity documents, frequently forged. You cannot verify what doesn't exist. When political pressure rewards speed, not accuracy, that's number three. If you process more people, then you get praised. If you slow things down to check something, you get accused of bigotry. Guess which incentive wins? Number four, when NGOs tell the government that caution is somehow harmful. International groups pressured US policymakers to, quote, err on the side of inclusion. Err on the side of inclusion? That sounds compassionate. Well, until somebody dies. Let me tell you something. Border agents are not superheroes. State Department processors are not State Department processors are not physics. Okay, you can't expect perfect vetting when you force people to move thousands of unverified individuals through a system built for hundreds. This is how you end up with people slipping through the cracks so large you could land a helicopter in them. And this is how you end up with tragedy. This is how you end up with burying soldiers. And every politician who stands in front of a camera saying our vetting is rigorous should have to look at those families in the eye and repeat that. Whenever an imported danger becomes impossible to ignore, Washington does what Washington does. They scramble to find someone, anyone, anybody else to blame. They blame guns. They blame trauma. They blame society. They blame systemic issues. They'll blame the deployment. They'll blame the weather if they have to. Anything to avoid blaming the thing that actually is responsible, the policy decisions that brought the attacker here. If a home alarm system fails and a burglar gets in, nobody blames the house. Nobody blames the neighborhood. They blame the broken alarm. But in immigration, no, no, no. You're not supposed to point at the broken system. You're supposed to pretend that the alarm worked even when it obviously didn't. You're supposed to say, not all immigrants. You're supposed to say, this doesn't represent the community. You're supposed to say, we must avoid backlash. But what you're not supposed to say, the thing that gets you labeled hateful, bigoted, and dangerous is the truth. This happened because the system failed. This happened because the vetting failed. This happened because the policy failed. This happened because the people in charge failed. And if we don't fix it, it's going to happen again. Now, Washington doesn't want to hear that, but the American people certainly do. Okay, now here's where this story takes a sharp turn. Because unlike the last administration, which threw open the gates, shrugged his shoulders, and hoped for the best, President Trump didn't dance around this tragedy. He stepped to the mic, dropped a diplomatic filter, and said what everyone else was too scared to admit. This was a heinous assault, an act of terror, and it came from the mass importation of unvetted individuals under the previous administration. This wasn't a political statement. This wasn't a campaign. This wasn't campaign language. This was a diagnosis. And then he did something that Washington forgot how to do. He acted immediately. Here's what the president ordered: a complete revetting of every single Afghan brought in under the chaotic invasion period. Not a sample, not a checkbox audit, not a review of processes. No, a full sweep. The government must now verify each individual actually is who they say they are and has the background they claim. They and pose no risk to the country. That should have been done day one instead of happening after a tragedy. To halt the new Afghan immigration approvals until vetting overhaul is complete. Again, just common sense. If the pipeline is broken, you don't keep pumping people through it. Only Washington needs two injured guardsmen to remember how common sense works. They're sending an additional 500 National Guard troops to deploy in DC. Critics will say that this militarizes the Capitol. But here's the question for them: what do you call a city where foreign nationals are shooting soldiers within sight of the White House? To me, that looks like a place that needs more security, not less. Trump saw a threat and responded like someone who understands the world isn't a college seminar. It's a dangerous place full of dangerous people. And again, but here's a part that nobody in the media will say out loud. Trump's response exposes how badly the previous administration failed. If you have to revet tens of thousands of people, that means that they were not vetted to begin with. And if they weren't vetted, then every single official who told the country our process is secure lied to the American people. And if they weren't vetted, then every single official who told the country that our process is secure lied to the American people. If revetting is needed now, then vetting wasn't done before, period. And that's not politics, that's just math. Folks, let's be honest. If the shooter had been a white American male, the media wouldn't need facts or evidence or motive. They would have their think pieces, their analysis panels, their root causes lectures ready by dinner time. You would have heard that crap all night long. And the first thing you would have heard this morning on the Today Show, on what's the other one? The CBS program with Gail Fisher. Gail Fisher was the Secretary of Mannix. Anyway, Gail, Oprah's friend, and Good Morning America, they would have all been on this. CNN would have been on it. MS Now, what they call it, would have been on this. But when the killers are foreign national, brought in under a beloved humanitarian policy, Everybody gets really shy. Well, suddenly they find we have to be cautious. Suddenly they remember we shouldn't politicize tragedy. Suddenly they want to, let's just wait for the facts. Funny how that works, isn't it? The media can't handle this story for three reasons. Three reasons. It exposes their decade-long propaganda campaign. Okay. For years, they insisted refugees and evacuees pose no security risk. They printed it as fact. They attacked anyone who questioned it. They equated caution with cruelty. Well, as far as we know, two guardsmen are fighting for their lives. And the narrative they protected is now lying in the street next to them. Number two, it undermines their saint-like portrayal of the Afghan evacuation. The media treated the evacuation as a moral triumph, a historic rescue. What they didn't want to talk about was the chaos. They didn't want to talk about the incomplete background checks. They didn't want to talk about the warnings from federal agents, because if the evacuation was sloppy, if the vetting was sloppy, then their whole moral crusade collapses. Number three, it validates Trump's warnings. And this is the biggest thing for them, because Trump said more than once that the rapid intake from unstable regions without strict vetting was dangerous. He said it in 2015, in 2016, during his presidency, during the evacuation. He said it during the campaign, and now he's been proven right one more time in the most painful way imaginable. When the media's favorite villain turns out to be the one who called the danger correctly, they panic. They don't know what to do with that. So they downplay the story. So they obscure the motive. They shift the focus. They talk about anything except the one fact that they cannot spin. Bad vetting kills people. All right. I told you that we were going to dig deep here. Hope that you've been able to hang in there. Let's peel back another layer. Bad vetting doesn't happen because governments are incompetent. So incompetence certainly plays a role. Bad vetting happens because some people in government actively prefer it. Some people in government actively prefer it. You're what it said, right? There are activists, policymakers, NGOs, and bureaucrats who believe that strict vetting is immoral, that America has an obligation somehow to accept people with minimal scrutiny. They see immigration as a moral act, not a national security function. And when you frame immigration as a moral crusade, the people doing the screening become the enemy. Here's that twisted logic. If you check someone's background, then you might exclude them. And if you exclude them, then you're being heartless. If you're heartless, then you're violating the moral mission. Therefore, caution is immoral. Therefore, vetting is immoral. You see how that works? This mindset has seeped into the federal agencies, especially under administrations that reward ideological activism. So the system bends. It bends away from caution towards inclusion. And the result is this: a system designed to say yes, not to find the truth. I give you an example of most Americans never hear. When the Afghan evacuation was underway, some DHS officials raised red flags about profiles of concern. Do you know what happened to them? They were ignored, overridden. And in some cases, people were actually reassigned because raising concerns slowed the process. And slowing the process was completely unacceptable. This wasn't an accident. This was ideology. And ideology kills people. Right. One of the laziest arguments in modern politics is the idea that compassion is always good. Compassion is good. when combined with wisdom. Compassion is good when paired with caution. Compassion is good when grounded in reality. But compassion without boundaries isn't morality, it's chaos. Let me give you a simple example. If someone shows up at your house hungry and you feed them, that's compassion. But if someone shows up at your house, refuses to tell you who they are, refuses to show you ID, has no known address, and gives you three different stories about where they've been, and you let them move into your spare room anyway, that's not compassion. That's stupidity. And nations aren't any different. America is the most generous nation on earth, but generosity doesn't work on autopilot. It must be guided by reason. And reason says this: you cannot import people faster than you can vet them. You cannot vet people whose identities cannot be verified. You cannot ignore risk because it feels nicer. If your compassion results in the death of your own citizen, then something has gone horribly wrong. And that's what we are now. This attack is not an isolated event. It's just a preview. If we don't fix the vetting system, this will happen again. If we continue to import people without knowing who they are, this will happen again. If we treat immigration as a moral performance instead of a national security responsibility, this will happen again. And the next time, it may not be two guardsmen. It may be a family. It may be at a school. It may be a subway. It may be a mall. It may be a church. Maybe a concert. And then Washington will pretend to be shocked again. You see where this is going. We all do. The only people who don't see it are the ones that are refusing to see it. The ones who think that borders are optional. The ones who think that vetting is mean. The ones who think that risk can be willed out of existence by calling anyone who mentions it a bigot. These are not serious people. These are not responsible people. These are not people who should be anywhere near national security decisions. But they are. And that's the problem. So I'm going to lay it out plainly. Here's what must happen right now. Here's what should happen when the sun comes up. Full revetting of every evacuee from the chaotic pipeline, not just Afghans. This includes biometric verification, identity confirmation, and criminal tracing. No exceptions. Number two, pause mass intake from any region where data reliability is low or non-existent. If you can't verify someone's past, you can't verify their safety. It's that simple. Number three, deport individuals that cannot be verified after a reasonable window. If someone cannot prove who they are, they can't stay. Compassion does not mean blind acceptance. Number four, hold the agencies accountable for vetting failures. If someone pushed people through without proper checks, then they should be removed immediately. Number five, stop allowing NGOs are non-governmental agencies, to set immigration policy. These groups operate with emotion, not national security. Their influence must end. Number six, make vetting a national priority, not a political liability. A country that cannot control who enters cannot protect who lives here. And finally, tell the truth. Tell the damn truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Because the cost of silence is measured in funerals. All right, here we go. Folks, America is not a daycare. America is not a therapy center. It's not a social experiment. It's a nation, a sovereign nation with borders and laws and people who deserve to live without fear of preventable violence. The two guardsmen who were shot had families. They have futures. They have lives in front of them. And those lives may have been cut short because someone in Washington decided that compassion was more important than caution, that ideology was more important than the truth, that speed was more important than safety. Tonight, we honor those soldiers by telling the truth the media won't touch. Bad vetting is deadly. Bad policy is deadly. Bad leadership is deadly. And ignoring these facts doesn't make the danger go away. It just brings the danger closer. But here's the good news. The part that nobody expects in a segment like this. Okay. America can fix this. We can regain control of the border. We can restore vetting, real vetting. We can protect our citizens. We can demand accountability. We can choose leaders who don't wait until after a tragedy to act, but only if we stop pretending that everything is fine. Only if we stop letting activists set policy. Only if we stop letting feelings override facts. Only if we face the danger head on. Because the imported danger is still danger. And the cost of ignoring it is written in blood. Folks, you deserve security. Your family deserves security. Those guardsmen deserve security. And if we return to common sense, then maybe, just maybe, the next tragedy doesn't happen. This has been the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. We tell the truth here, even when Washington won't. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, I'll take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye bye now.